January 14th, 1973. In less than 24 hours, Elvis Presley would step onto a stage in Honolulu and perform for the largest audience in entertainment history. 1.5 billion people across 40 countries would watch via satellite as the king of rock and roll attempted the impossible. A live global broadcast that would either cement his comeback or expose his decline to the entire world. But right now, at 3 a.m. in his hotel suite, Elvis wasn't thinking about making history. He was having a panic attack. His hands were shaking. His heart was racing. His costume didn't fit. Colonel Parker was screaming about money. Priscilla had just left him 6 months ago. And the pressure, the crushing, suffocating pressure of having to be perfect in front of 1.5 billion people, was threatening to break him. This is the story of the fight before Aloha from Hawaii. The backstage chaos that almost destroyed the most important performance of Elvis's life. And the question nobody could answer. How did a man on the verge of collapse deliver the greatest show of his career? By January 1973, Elvis Presley was at a crossroads. The 1968 comeback special had reminded the world that he still had it. The Vegas residencies had made him rich again. But the personal cost was devastating. His marriage to Priscilla had ended in October 1972. He was heartbroken. He was gaining weight rapidly. His prescription drug use had escalated from occasional to constant. And his confidence, once unshakable, was crumbling. He needed a win. A big win. Something to prove to the world and to himself that he was still the king. And that's when Colonel Tom Parker came up with the idea. A live concert broadcast via satellite to the entire world. The first of its kind. A global event. Aloha from Hawaii. The concept was brilliant and terrifying. Elvis would perform live from the Honolulu International Center Arena. The show would be beamed via satellite to countries across Asia, Europe, and beyond. It would be the most watched entertainment event in history. Bigger than any Super Bowl. Bigger than any royal wedding. This was Elvis's chance to reclaim his throne. But it was also an enormous risk. Because if he failed, if he forgot lyrics, if he looked bad, if his voice cracked, the whole world would see it. There would be no second take, no editing, no hiding. Just Elvis, live, in front of 1.5 billion people. The pressure started building months before the show. Colonel Parker micromanaged every detail. The set list, the staging, the promotion. Parker saw Aloha as his masterpiece, his greatest promotional achievement. He plastered Elvis's face on everything. He negotiated broadcast rights in dozens of countries. He hyped the show as the television event of the century. And Elvis? Elvis just wanted to survive it. He wasn't excited. He was terrified. Because deep down, Elvis knew he wasn't in the best shape. He knew his voice wasn't what it used to be. He knew the pills were affecting his performance. And he knew that the entire world was waiting to see if the king still had his crown. But what happened in the final 24 hours before the show was something nobody anticipated. At 3 p.m. on January 13th, 1973, exactly 24 hours before showtime, Elvis tried on his costume for the final time. It was a white jumpsuit designed by Bill Ballou, Elvis's costume designer. Skin-tight, studded with jewels, a massive American eagle emblazoned on the front. It was supposed to be iconic. Bill Ballou had been working on the costume for months. He knew Elvis's measurements. He knew what looked good on camera. He had designed dozens of jumpsuits for Elvis over the years. But this one was different. This one had to be perfect, because 1.5 billion people would be watching. Ballou had chosen white specifically because it would glow under the stage lights. The American eagle was patriotic, powerful, a symbol of Elvis's dominance. The cape, the cape, was 6 feet long, lined with red and gold, designed to flow dramatically when Elvis moved. It was a masterpiece of design, but it was also a costume that required Elvis to be in peak physical condition. And Elvis was not in peak physical condition. When Elvis put it on, it didn't fit. He had gained too much weight. The jumpsuit was too tight around the waist. The zipper barely closed. Elvis looked down at his stomach bulging against the white fabric and felt a wave of shame wash over him. The cape felt heavy and awkward, pulling on his shoulders. And when Elvis looked at himself in the mirror, he didn't see the king of rock and roll. He saw a man who looked tired, bloated, desperate. He saw his father's body, the weight, the decline, and for a moment, standing in that dressing room, Elvis considered canceling the entire thing. Bill Ballou tried to reassure him. "We can let it out. We can adjust the fit. It's not a problem." But Elvis wasn't listening. He was staring at his reflection, seeing every flaw magnified. The double chin, the puffy face, the way the jumpsuit clung to places it shouldn't. He turned away from the mirror and said quietly, "I look like a joke." The room went silent. Nobody knew what to say, because part of them feared he was right. His entourage, the Memphis Mafia, tried to reassure him. "You look great, E. Nobody's gonna notice. You're gonna kill it out there." But Elvis wasn't buying it. He could see the truth in the mirror, and he knew the audience would see it too. He turned to his longtime friend and bodyguard, Red West, and said, "What if I fail? What if I go out there and embarrass myself in front of the whole world?" Red didn't have an answer, because the truth was, Red was worried too. He had seen Elvis's decline up close. The pills, the mood swings, the weight gain, and he didn't know if Elvis could pull this off. Then, at around 8 p.m. on January 13th, Colonel Parker arrived at Elvis's hotel suite, and things went from bad to worse. Parker was furious. He had just found out that RCA Records, the company distributing the broadcast, wanted to donate the proceeds from the show to a cancer charity. Parker had agreed to this publicly. It made him look generous. It made Elvis look like a humanitarian. Good PR. But privately, Parker was livid, because Parker didn't work for free. And he certainly didn't let Elvis work for free. Parker had spent his entire career taking 50% of everything Elvis earned. 50% of every record sold. 50% of every concert ticket. 50% of every movie paycheck. And now RCA wanted to give the money away? To charity? Parker saw this as a personal attack, as if his greed was being exposed, as if someone was trying to cut him out. So he stormed into Elvis's room, cigar in hand, face red with anger, and demanded that they renegotiate. Elvis, already stressed and exhausted, looked up from the couch where he'd been sitting in silence for hours. "What are you talking about, Colonel?" Parker slammed a contract down on the table. "This charity nonsense. We're not doing it. We need to renegotiate with RCA. Get our cut." Elvis stared at him in disbelief. "This is supposed to be for charity, Colonel. That's the whole point. That's what we told everyone." Parker waved his hand dismissively. "Charity is fine when it's convenient, but not when it costs us money. You think RCA cares about you? They're using you for good press while they make millions." Elvis stood up, his voice rising. "I don't care about the money. For once in my life, can't we just do something that isn't about money?" Parker stepped closer, jabbing his cigar toward Elvis. "You don't care about money because you've never had to worry about it. I made you rich. I made you famous. And you're going to throw that away for some feel-good charity stunt?" Elvis's hands balled into fists. "You made me? You made me? I'm the one on that stage. I'm the one people want to see. You're just the guy taking half." And this is where everything exploded. Elvis, fueled by pills and frustration, stood up and shouted at Parker, "I'm tired of you controlling everything. This is my show, my career, and you're turning it into a business transaction." Parker, never one to back down, shouted back, "Without me, you'd still be driving a truck in Memphis. Everything you have is because of me." The argument escalated. Voices got louder. Objects were thrown. At one point, Elvis grabbed a chair and hurled it across the room. The Memphis Mafia tried to step in, but Elvis waved them off. This was between him and Parker, and years of resentment, years of Elvis feeling like a puppet on Parker's strings, came pouring out. Wait a minute. Don't miss this detail. The fight wasn't just about money. It was about control. Elvis had spent his entire career being told what to do, what songs to sing, what movies to make, what image to project. And Aloha from Hawaii was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be Elvis taking back control, proving to the world that he was still relevant, still powerful, still the king. But here was Colonel Parker, once again turning it into a business deal. And Elvis couldn't take it anymore. The fight lasted nearly an hour, and when it finally ended, Parker stormed out, slamming the door behind him. Elvis collapsed onto the couch, physically and emotionally drained. And the show was less than 18 hours away. But you haven't seen the biggest surprise yet. At around 11 p.m. on January 13th, Elvis received an unexpected visitor, Priscilla Presley, his ex-wife, the woman who had left him just 3 months earlier. She showed up at his hotel suite unannounced and asked to speak with him. The Memphis Mafia tried to turn her away. "This isn't a good time, Priscilla. He's not feeling well." But Priscilla was insistent. "I know he's not feeling well. That's why I'm here." She pushed past them and walked into the suite. She found Elvis sitting alone in the dark living room, curtains drawn, staring at the floor. The TV was on but muted. Empty pill bottles littered the coffee table. He looked up when she entered, and for a moment, he looked like a ghost. Pale, hollow, defeated. Priscilla sat down next to him, maintaining some distance but close enough to show she cared. "I heard you had a rough day," she said softly. Elvis looked at her, and for the first time in months, his guard came down. His eyes filled with tears. "I don't know if I can do this, Scylla. I don't know if I have it in me anymore." Priscilla reached over and took his hand. It was shaking. "Talk to me. What's going on?" And Elvis, for the next 30 minutes, told her everything. About the costume not fitting, about the fight with Parker, about the pressure of performing for 1.5 billion people, about feeling like a fraud, like a has-been pretending to still be relevant. "What if I go out there and they see what I see in the mirror?" he asked. "What if they realize I'm not the king anymore? What if I'm just done?" Priscilla listened without interrupting. She let him pour it all out. The fear, the insecurity, the desperation. And when he finally went quiet, exhausted from the emotional purge, she spoke. Priscilla, to her credit, didn't coddle him. She didn't tell him it would be okay. She looked him in the eye and said, "Elvis, you've been performing your entire life. You were born to be on that stage. And tomorrow, the whole world is going to remember why." Elvis shook his head. "What if I'm not good enough anymore?" Priscilla squeezed his hand harder. "Then you fake it. You go out there, you smile, and you give them the Elvis they want to see. Because that's what you do. That's who you are. You're not Elvis Presley, the person right now. You're Elvis Presley, the performer. And the performer never fails." It wasn't the most comforting pep talk, but it was exactly what Elvis needed to hear. Because Priscilla understood something that nobody else did. Elvis wasn't afraid of failing. He was afraid of being forgotten. He was afraid that the world would move on without him, that his time had passed, that he'd be remembered as a relic from the 1950s instead of the living legend he wanted to be. Priscilla's words didn't erase his fear, but they gave him a strategy, a way to survive the next 18 hours. Fake it. Perform. Be the king, even if you don't feel like one. When Priscilla left around midnight, Elvis walked her to the door. He hugged her, longer than was comfortable for two divorced people, and whispered, "Thank you." She pulled back and looked at him. "You're going to be great tomorrow. I know you are." And then she was gone. Elvis closed the door and stood there for a long moment, his hand still on the doorknob. Then he walked back into the dark living room and sat down, and he cried. Not because he was sad, but because Priscilla's visit reminded him of what he'd lost and what he'd never get back. After Priscilla left, Elvis tried to sleep, but sleep wouldn't come. He took more pills. Uppers to stay awake, downers to calm down. His mind was racing. He kept thinking about the costume, about Parker, about the 1.5 billion people who would be watching, about Priscilla's words, "Give them the Elvis they want to see." And somewhere around 4 a.m., Elvis made a decision. He was going to go through with it, not because he felt ready, not because he was confident, but because backing out would be worse than failing. Backing out would mean admitting defeat, and Elvis Presley didn't admit defeat. You won't believe this, but the morning of January 14, 1973, started with more chaos. Elvis woke up at noon, just 6 hours before showtime, and immediately started second-guessing everything. The set list, the costume, his hair, his voice. He ran through vocal warm-ups, but his voice felt rough. He hadn't slept. His body was exhausted, and the panic was creeping back in. Joe Esposito, Elvis's road manager, tried to keep things on schedule. But Elvis wasn't cooperating. He kept changing his mind about songs. He wanted to add an American trilogy. Then he wanted to cut it. Then he wanted it back in. The band was getting frustrated. The director was getting nervous. And Colonel Parker, still angry from the night before, was nowhere to be found. At 4 p.m., just 2 hours before showtime, Elvis finally put on the white jumpsuit. It still didn't fit perfectly, but Bill Ballou had made some last-minute adjustments. The cape was shortened. The waist was let out slightly. Elvis looked in the mirror again, and this time he saw something different. Not the confident superstar of 1956, not the movie star of the 1960s, but something else. Something older, something weathered, but still powerful, still commanding. He turned to Charlie Hodge, his longtime friend and guitarist, and said, "All right, let's do this." The walk from the dressing room to the stage felt like a mile. Elvis moved slowly, deliberately. He could hear the crowd already. Thousands of people filling the arena. And he knew that beyond those walls, millions, no, billions, were tuning in, waiting, judging, expecting perfection. When he reached the side of the stage, he stopped. He closed his eyes. He took a deep breath, and then he heard it. The opening notes of Theme from 2001, A Space Odyssey. His entrance music. It was time. What you're seeing now is nothing compared to this, because what happened next was nothing short of a miracle. Elvis walked onto that stage, jumpsuit glittering under the lights, cape flowing behind him, and the crowd erupted. The energy hit him like a wave, and in that moment, everything else disappeared. The fight with Parker, the panic attacks, the failed marriage, the weight gain, the pills, none of it mattered. Because Elvis Presley was on stage. And when Elvis Presley was on stage, he was invincible. The opening was designed to be dramatic. The lights went down. The audience hushed. Then, the iconic opening strains of Also Sprach Zarathustra, better known as the theme from 2001, A Space Odyssey, filled the arena. The music built slowly, dramatically, and then the spotlight hit Elvis as he walked onto the stage. The white jumpsuit caught the light and seemed to glow. The cape billowed, and Elvis raised one hand in his signature gesture. The crowd went wild, screaming, crying, standing, and Elvis, who just hours ago had been curled up on a hotel couch contemplating failure, now stood like a god. He opened with C.C. Ryder, and the voice, that legendary voice, was there, strong, clear, powerful, better than it had been in months. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was the fear. Maybe it was Priscilla's words echoing in his head. Give them the Elvis they want to see. Whatever it was, it worked. Elvis moved across the stage with surprising grace. He smiled. He joked with the audience. He flirted with the cameras. He owned the moment. And the audience, both in the arena and the billions watching on TV, were mesmerized. For the next hour, Elvis performed like a man possessed. Burning Love, Blue Suede Shoes, Hound Dog. Each song was delivered with precision and passion. He forgot lyrics once or twice, But he recovered so smoothly that most people didn't notice. He improvised. He ad-libbed. He made the audience feel like they were the only people in the world. And when he performed an American trilogy, Der Years, song he had been debating about just hours earlier, he delivered one of the most powerful performances of his career. An American trilogy was a medley of 3 American songs: Dixie, the Battle Hymn of the Republic, and All My Trials. Elvis had been performing it in his live shows for a year, and it had become a showstopper. But this version, this Aloha performance, was different. Elvis stood center stage. The cape spread wide like wings, and sang with every ounce of emotion he had. His voice soared. The orchestra swelled. The audience was silent, captivated. And for those 4 minutes, Elvis wasn't just a performer. He was an artist, a legend, the king. When the final note rang out, there was a beat of silence, and then the arena exploded in applause. When the show ended, Elvis took his final bow. The crowd gave him a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. People were crying, screaming his name, throwing leis onto the stage. The band was ecstatic. The director was thrilled. And Colonel Parker, watching from the control room, smiled his calculating smile, because he knew they had just made history. He knew this broadcast would be talked about for decades. He knew that Elvis Presley had just proven, once again, that he was still the king. But Elvis walked off that stage, went straight to his dressing room, and collapsed. Not from exhaustion, but from emotional release, because he had done it. Against all odds, against his own doubts, against his failing body and crumbling mind, he had delivered. And for one brief shining moment, Elvis Presley was the king again. He sat on the couch in his dressing room, still wearing the white jumpsuit, sweat pouring down his face, and he cried. Charlie Hodge found him there 20 minutes later and asked if he was okay. Elvis looked up and said, "I don't know. Ask me tomorrow." The celebrations went on without him. The band partied. The crew celebrated. Colonel Parker schmoozed with executives. But Elvis stayed in his dressing room for over an hour, alone with his thoughts. When he finally emerged, he went straight back to his hotel suite. No after-party, no victory lap, just back to the room. The jumpsuit was hung in the closet. The cape was folded on a chair, and Elvis sat in the dark, the same way he had been sitting just 24 hours earlier. Except now, instead of panic, he felt nothing. But the story doesn't end there. Because after the adrenaline wore off, after the congratulations and the champagne, Elvis was alone again. Back in his hotel suite, the jumpsuit hanging in the closet, the cape folded on a chair, and the silence returned. He had just performed for 1.5 billion people. He had proven to the world that he still had it. But he didn't feel victorious. He felt empty, because the applause fades, the lights go out. And Elvis was still the same man he was before the show. Still heartbroken, still addicted, still searching for something that fame and success couldn't give him. He reached for the pill bottles on the nightstand, and the cycle began again. Red West, who had been with Elvis through the entire ordeal, later said in an interview that Aloha from Hawaii was both Elvis's greatest triumph and his greatest tragedy. He proved he was still the best, Red said. But it also showed him that no amount of success would fill the void. He conquered the world that night, and then he came back to an empty room and realized it didn't matter. That quote haunted fans for years, because it revealed the central tragedy of Elvis's life. He could command a stage. He could captivate billions, but he couldn't find peace. Jerry Schilling, another member of the Memphis Mafia, said that Elvis never watched the Aloha from Hawaii broadcast. Not once. When it aired in the United States in April 1973, Elvis was in Las Vegas, performing at the Hilton. Someone suggested they watch it together. Elvis refused. Jerry asked why. Elvis said, "Because I know what I looked like, and I don't need to see it." Jerry tried to convince him that it was incredible, that he should be proud, but Elvis just shook his head. "It doesn't matter how good I was," Elvis said. "It's never good enough." Priscilla Presley, in later interviews, said that the night before Aloha was the last time she and Elvis really connected. "He was vulnerable," she said, "and he let me see it. After that, the walls went back up. He went back to being Elvis Presley, the performer, and I lost the person underneath." Priscilla also said that she believes Aloha from Hawaii took years off Elvis's life. The stress of it, the pressure, the pills he took to get through it, it was too much. And he never recovered. The fight with Colonel Parker was never fully resolved. After Aloha, their relationship became purely transactional. Elvis resented Parker for turning the show into a business deal. Parker resented Elvis for questioning his authority. They continued working together because neither could afford to walk away. But the trust was gone. And without trust, the partnership became toxic. Parker pushed Elvis harder. More shows, more tours, more money. And Elvis, too tired and too addicted to resist, just went along with it. But here's the most heartbreaking part of the story. In the years after Aloha from Hawaii, Elvis would often reference that night. He'd tell people it was the best he ever felt on stage, the most connected to the audience, the most alive. But he could never recreate it. He spent the next 4 years chasing that feeling, doing more concerts, taking more pills, pushing his body harder. But the magic was gone. Because Aloha from Hawaii wasn't just a performance. It was Elvis using every ounce of willpower, every bit of skill, every desperate hope to prove he still mattered. And once he proved it, he had nothing left. When Elvis died on August 16, 1977, one of the things found in his bedroom was a photograph from Aloha from Hawaii. Elvis in the white jumpsuit, arms raised, cape spread like wings. He kept it on his nightstand. Some people think he kept it as a reminder of his glory, but those who knew him believed it was something else, a reminder of what he could have been, of what he should have been, and of the price he paid for one perfect night. Tell us in the comments, have you ever faced a moment where you had to prove yourself or lose everything? What's the hardest comeback you've ever made? Do you think the pressure of fame is worth the glory? Let us know what city you're watching from today. Subscribe to our channel for more untold stories of Elvis Presley, the moments that tested him and the performances that defined him. Hit the bell to never miss a story that matters.